Okay, so first thing, file new, start a new assembly. So we'll get a blank 3D workspace, and we need to bring in the first component. And the first part that we're going to bring in is the anchor. Click open, and then if we hit the green tick, that will stick it at the part's origin. I'll come back and explain the anchor part in a minute. So to bring in the next component, we click on Insert Components from the Assembly tab, Browse, and the first part we want to bring in of the actual assembly itself is called the crank. I'll zoom out a little bit, and I can drop that anywhere in space, and the best practice is to make the parts in as you bring them in. So I'll start the make command, and I'll make that end face there flush with that face, and then a cylindrical make between that part, and that's a cone face, that won't work particularly well, and I can use that face there. Okay. Now, you remember before I explained that we brought the anchor part in first. The anchor part is there because we don't have the cylinder block here for these parts to rotate around. So to enable that motion, we need a dummy part in effect just to ground it. So that's why the anchor part is there. Okay, we can now go Insert Components, Browse, and we can bring in the crank pin. Put that anywhere in space for now. Start the mate, so let's mate it, so that doesn't actually align then, so it's into the hole. Then I can make this face flush with this face, and OK that. Okay, and then bring in the next component, which is another crank. Now you notice at the minute this crank should be the other way around. Now I can either use the rotate command button to give it a helping hand. Let's put it back to where it was. Okay, and if I start the make command now, make that face there and that face, still the wrong way around, but I can get the software to spin it round for me. As long as those two holes are in line, the software doesn't see the difference between that and that, so this is where we have to give it a little bit of a helping hand, and that's the one that we want. Okay, now I can make this face onto there to slide it on, and then obviously when we turn the crank we want them both to turn together. So I can do a make between that face and that face so that they both turn exactly the same. Okay, so Insert Components, we can now bring the con rod in. So connecting rod, open, and just put it anywhere for now. And the first make we're going to put on is the axial line between those two cylindrical faces. And then I can make that face up to that face. Now what we'll see here is that we've got a gap one side and it's flush the other side. Now what we really want is for that to be centred with a little bit of clearance either side. Now to work out what size that gap is, a useful feature is to go Tools, Measure, and pick the two faces there and there. Now if you can't see this box here at the time, we can toggle that on and off there, and what you'll see there is the normal distance between those two faces is 2 millimeters. So we've got a 2 millimeter gap now. Close that down. Go into my mates. That was the last one I put on, so I can right click and edit feature, and I put it on as a coincident mate before, so the two faces were touching. If I change that to a distance mate, it wants to be a 1 millimeter gap either side, so I can change that to 1 millimeter, and it just shifts it over slightly for us. If it had gone the wrong way, we could have toggled the direction. Okay, let's hit the green tick there. Okay, so that's my con rod in place at the minute. I can now say Insert Components, Browse. Let's put the piston head on next. Okay, so I can make that face to that inside face there, so they're in line. So you'll notice there that we could actually build this assembly up without pins. As long as we actually align the inside of those holes, Solidworks does not actually need a pin there to be in place. Okay, if I then bring in the piston pin, there we go. Okay, and again I can make that into the centre of the hole. I can make these two end faces flush there, and then I can make the inside face of the con rod the inside of this bracket here. Okay, and that's everything now in place. Okay, now what you'll notice now is although this is in place, it's all fixed together, it's just moving in a really random motion. There's nothing at the minute stopping that from going up and down, so that's what we'll look at fixing next.